It's like everybody's got a cell phone these days. So much so that having a home phone or a landline might not be the way you need to go. But before you cut that cord, we want to check in with our resident nerd, Ryan Eldridge, co-founder of Nerds on Call. Always nice to see you, sir.
Nice to see you, too.
Okay, we've got a list of things to consider. Let's start with power. If you lose power frequently, then you might not want to get rid of it.
Yeah, well, think about the phone you're using now. Is if you're using kind of an older style phone that doesn't require power, if your power goes out in your house, you don't need to worry about things. You can still call 911 or call out and make sure your neighbor's got power or whatever. But if you have one of those fancier phones that requires a plug-in, it doesn't really matter. If you have a landline or not, if power goes out, you're going to lose it anyway. So consider that. Is that something that's important to you? Also, you might want to consider the reliability of your cell phone. If you ditch your landline, you're going to need to use your cell phone for everything.
Sure.
And so do you have enough minutes on that? How is your battery life? For example, towards the end of the night, if you run out of battery life, you're going to have to plug it in anyway. So that's something to consider. I know in our house, we have certain pockets of the house where we get no reception at all, and certain pockets where we get good reception. So you might want to consider that too.
What about if you have a home alarm system? I just saw an ad the other day, and they were saying, oh, and this one goes through your cell phone, which makes it even better. But is that better?
Well, it can be. Like in Reading, which is where we live, we have a landline in our house because we have to have it set up for the phone system because their little cell tower doesn't really work for our thing. And if we get a fire or a break-in in the house, we want to make sure that that gets out to the responders. But if you're here in Sacramento, that might be something to consider because the little cell chip they put inside your alarm sometimes can be cheaper than actually having your whole alarm system.
Okay, what if you've got young kids in the house or mom and dad are living with you?
Yeah, so we always put a little lock screen, or well, we should always put a lock screen on our phone. Sometimes we don't. But if you have a lock screen on your phone, just swiping it and figuring out how to dial out to 911 can take time. And for young ones and for elderly, sometimes that can be a little difficult. So you should consider that too.
Why are you looking at me when you said that? Why are you doing
well,
that?
Do you still have a landline?
I do. I still do, yeah.
Well, it turns out 41% of Americans don't have a landline. They've cut the cord. And here's the weird thing is as the older you get, the more likely you are to have a landline in your house.
Let's wrap it up with, are there alternatives?
So there's like VoIP, which is like cable companies offer VoIP service. And the problem with VoIP is it's got the same restrictions as your cell phone. It has to have power. We've heard that there's garbled or messed up phone signal. The GPS doesn't always work perfectly for letting you know if you're calling 911. So if you have an alternative of going to your cable company or satellite provider for your phone, I would go my cell phone first before I did it. So consider all of these things before you ditch your landline, but in most cases, as the years go on, the landline's going the way of the dinosaur, just like the newspaper and all that other good stuff.
Stuff for you to consider. All good advice. And before we go, Jackson, stand up and walk over here.
Come over here, quick.
I want to show you that he's not a true nerd because he's got a great-looking kid here. Jackson is 6½, getting ready to go into first grade, if I'm not mistaken, right? Oh, second grade?
First grade, right?
First grade. I thought so. I thought so. You look a lot like your mom, and that's a good thing. We'll send it back over to you, Dina. He's a cute kid.